Hi everybody, my name is Bill Oliver and this is my channel, Boston Devops Bill. Welcome back for another exciting episode. In this episode, we're going to be working on our syncing of IP addresses across all virtual hosts we define. In previous lessons, previous episodes, we created a mechanism to write to our IP file as the boxes come up. We ran into a problem with the connection or the shares, and we fixed that. So now we're going to move on to defining our system D, and we're going to define a script that's going to read our IP file and then write that to the bottom of the host file. So all of our IP addresses from all of our virtual machines will be defined. We'll do that by writing a script called update host file, and that script is going to log the start of execution. It's going to read the system host file, and then it's going to copy all the entries over to our temporary host file, and if it cannot access the IP file, it's going to throw an error. So inside of our log file, we'll see that yes, it started, and yes, we got an error. Okay, or we'll just see that it started, and we'll assume it completed successfully without adding too many lines to our messages file. We'll also append that IP file to the host file, and that will give us a consistent list of host IDs, host IPs across all of our virtual machines. Now, we'll fire off this, we'll actually execute the host file based upon a cron system, which we're going to create inside of System D. System D, to implement this, we'll use two unit files. We'll use the timer file that will wake up and call our service file, and our service file is going to call that script the update host file script. And what that's going to give us is a mechanism to always check that file, and then if so, update our host file as needed. So we'll set the timer for that to run every 5 minutes relative to boot, and 5 minutes after each time it runs. So the service file is going to be dependent on the network. In other words, System D will install these unit files that we create as the machine boots up. But we don't want to run our service file prior to having a network. And further, we want to make sure that our VirtualBox guest editions are installed properly also, because that VirtualBox guest edition is setting up our shares, or the share mechanism, as well as a few other things which will be dependent on. And the VirtualBox guest editions gets installed into the kernel. So once the kernel says, hey, this guest edition is properly installed, that's when our service file will be able to be called. So it'll sit there dormant until those two dependencies exist. Our network comes up to the online status, and our VirtualBox guest editions get installed properly into the kernel and then are activated so that we can depend upon the share which we created in the previous lesson to access the IP file and then append it to our host file. So as you can see, we got a really big show, a lot of fun, a lot of new things coming in. So let's go pound some keys, okay? Okay, we're going to begin by jumping into the build prod machine, and we're just going to SSH into it. And what we're going to do is we're going to make a directory called IP setup, and this is where we're going to do our development for our script here. Okay. Now, one of the things which I said is that we have better security, and we really do, with our shares. So, using the VirtualBox shares, they put the shares underneath the media directory. And because we're using an auto mounter solution, it will automatically determine what the mount point is going to be. So if we do a df minus k minus h, we can see that we have a single share underneath media group called admin. This is the admin share which we set up for the build prod machine. So in order to look down it, we can do a ls/media, and we can see the share itself, but we can't, but that's as far as we can get. If we go into admin, it tells us permission denied. And until we're in the proper group, we're not going to be able to look down any shares. So that's one of the reasons why I think that this is a better, that gives us better security. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's not worry about this just yet. We're going to actually copy that file though, and the file which is underneath that directory that we can't see is our IP file, and we're copying it to our current location. And we're copying it to our current location simply so that we can do the testing of our script once we write it. So ipfile.txt, we'll copy that here. As you can see, it's now root. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a sudo, and we're going to do a chown vagrant, and for our IP file, there we are. And we're going to take the executable bit off, and we're just going to chmod this to 644, which is read, write, read. And the reason for that is because executable files for text files is really not required, and it's in fact dangerous. In any case, let's go ahead and copy the host file. And this is going to set up, so if we do a cat of hosts and then a cat of IP, okay, so right now we have the two files which we need in order to do any type of testing, okay. So why don't we stop writing this script, and that way we can test it afterwards, okay. So if we do a vi, and we're going to call this script update host file.shell, and we're going to begin with the traditional #bang and bin bash. And what we're going to do now is we're going to just describe share locations. Thank you. Okay, so our vagrant share is located at media/sf and admin. Now, that's great for this when it's installed for the system, but for right now, for testing, what we're going to default it to is home, vagrant, and notice how I just redefined the variable, and this is a good way which I've learned to test is because what I can guarantee is that the spelling of the names are correct. I can, then check the actual paths, and I know the paths are correct. So what that gives me is the ability to just remove one of the variables, and either by comment or just removing it from the file itself and having it without changing the system too much. So it gives me a little bit better confidence. Okay, and our host data file is going to be ipfile.txt. And we're going to define our update system file, which is going to be etc. hosts. And again, I'm just going to copy this. And I'm going to give that file a name, ip file dot, correction, this is going to be hosts without the path. And now let's go ahead and we're going to define a log tag. And what the log tag is going to be used for, it's going to be used to write a log entry into our system log and to identify this as vagrant. And maybe we'll append this and say vagrant. No, we're just going to leave that vagrant. That's fine. Okay. And now I'm going to define an update separator. And this is going to be placed after the host file. Don't update beyond this line. Put a couple extra back here. Perfect. Now let's go ahead and define a temp file that will contain our process number. So /tmp, and we'll call it vagrant host file $. And now we're going to have a field separator set to a new line, which means that we'll read a complete line from all of our files. Now, the way in which I'm going to structure this is we're going to structure this script as a service script, which means that typically on a service script, I can pass in a start, a start, stop, restart. We're not going to need that, but I'm going to structure it that way, which means that everything, all the functionality is going to go into a function, and then we're simply going to call that function. So here we're going to say regen host file. And I'm going to use a status or a state variable. And I'm going to use that state variable as a way to read the file and to collect what the information that we want from the file. But first, I'm going to just put in a test for to see if the temp file exists. And if it does exist, we're going to remove it. Now, we should never really have to invoke this unless somebody comes in and removes the $$ at the end, thinking that it's something else, like a typo, and it's not a typo, okay? But I had somebody do that who swore up and down it was a typo until I proved it wasn't. And that caused me quite a bit of aggravation, because I was trying to get out. It was a Friday night and right before a holiday, and they changed something that they didn't think mattered earlier in the afternoon, and by closing time it was just a daggone mess, and took a while to find that. So I'm just kind of protecting myself. So just in case it does, we'll protect against it. Sometimes that's what we have to do. Okay, we have to protect against people who have great intentions in mind, but sometimes don't realize the implication of what they're doing. So therefore it causes problems. Okay, and it's a learning experience for them, and it's an opportunity to invest in patience. Yeah, I try. Okay, in any case, what I'm doing right here is I'm using a state variable, find 0, and if we find this line in the file, I'm going to set it to 1. Okay, and I'm using a very simple test here. Now, we didn't do this type of construct for a sort of an if statement inside of Ruby when we defined a function. And the reason being is because that line was just so long that if I would attach it to the end and implemented it very similar to what we're doing here, it would have been difficult for you to see what I was doing at the end of the line. And if you missed it once, you'd have to scroll back and forward and all that other happy stuff. So I structured it as an if then. This is small enough where what we're doing is we're simply using the test operators. The bracket and the double brackets are test operators. And what we can do is we can simply test for a Boolean value. We can put in a conditional, and it's going to evaluate to either true or false. And if it's true, and this is true, which we know it's going to be, everything will be happy. If this conditional evaluates to false, like this one will, then we're not going to execute this statement right here. And this is kind of a bash. This is a bashism and a Bourne shellism, okay, that we can do this in. Now, also K-shell, I think. Now, when it comes to, you'll see constructs like bracket, 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 and what that means is that anything in between here, you don't have to quote, okay? But it's less portable, and because I don't know how your environment is set up, I'm leaning towards the most portable constructs I can do within reason. Now, what we're doing here is we know that when we go through the host file, if we hit this don't update beyond this line, we're not going to collect any more, and we're not going to write any more of that host file into this temp file. Now what we're going to do is we're going to check to make sure that vagrant share and our host file data file, which is our IP file, we want to make sure that this exists, okay? So, and if it exists, then what we want to do is we want to call the logger command, and we're simply going to define a, and I'm going to put warning. We're going to define a log entry using the logger command, in order to ensure that if something goes wrong, we know about it. Because as DevOps engineers, we always collect our logs, we shoot them all over the place. We want to make sure that everything is working properly. And if not, we need something to say, hey, it's not working properly. Okay, so in this case, we put the error, and we're going to say can't access IP file. And we're talking about this file right here. So I'm going to add it here simply as a breadcrumb, simply to say, hey, you know, this is what's going on. And I'm also going to put what was the invocation or the command that was run to get here. So I put in command 0 or $0, which is the name of the program and the path of the program that was executed. And I'm going to, I'm in insert mode. Okay, we'll fix that. There we go. And if that's the case, we're going to exit out and we're going to be done. But I'm also going to grab this logger command here and come up to the very top of our function, and I'm pop it in. And the reason for that is simply so that we can make an informational message, and that info, we'll leave it at that, and we're just going to say checking / updating IP file. So when we get our logs, and hopefully all we'll see is this check right here, this statement inside of our var messages file. And once we see that, what we're hoping is that we don't see this error, because this error means that something went wrong. But if we do, we at least know where to look for it and how to resolve it. So now I'm just going to echo a blank line at the end of the temp file, and followed by our update separator. And we're going to put this inside of our temp file. Okay. And now the only thing we have to do is we have to read our IP file and append it to the end of the file, and we should be all set. But like most things in life, okay, we're going to grab the share name, and we're going to back up here, put a little $sign there, and another $sign, and we're going to pick up the host data file. Okay. So now that we check to see that the vagrant share and the host data file can be accessed, we're simply going to jump into a for loop, and we're going to write that line into our temp host file. But before we do that, what we want to do is we want to clean that line just in case there's any type of additional line termination that doesn't match our current one. In this case, I'm going to echo line, and I'm pipe that into sed, which is a stream editor, and I'm going to check for new line in return. The new line will come from a PC file, and the return will come from a Mac file. And if we find either one of those, we want to substitute it with nothing, and that's what that second slash is for. But we only want to find this. Whoops, wait a second, let me back up here. We want to find this new line or this return at the end of the line, and only the end of the line. And if so, we want to remove it by simply saying replace it with nothing. And we want to do it globally on that string. Oh, that's okay. And that should do it, okay? So now what we want to do is we want to echo this $line, and we want to put it inside of our temp file. Okay. And now we are done. And once we're through, we want to copy this file, the temp file, to update our system host file. And we're going to close that function off. And I'm just going to grab the name of that function, and we should be set. So let's take a real quick look through this. Okay, we have the vagrant share. We have our IP setup. Okay. Set our hosts and hosts. We have the file. We got the logger command. We got the status going correctly. Okay, so we got the state of that file. And we're also checking to make sure that it exists. And everything looks okay. So let me, let's take a shot at this. Okay, so before we do that, let's do a chmod of 750. And we'll put that to update shell. Okay, and that should allow us to read and read-write execute, as well as for a group to have execute access. And if you're not in our group, then you're not going to get access to anything. Okay, so let's see, we have our files here, and why don't we give it a quick run, see what happens. And okay, looks like we got a, okay, that's what I get for unexpected, okay, token. Alright, looks like we got a little confusion there. Okay, yep, go ahead and update that. So let's come down here, and that's correct. We're echoing line into sed. That looks good. / okay. Yeah, that looks okay to me. Am I missing something? No, I got my 2 slashes there. That line looks okay to me. Oh! What the heck was that? One change before. I have no idea what that was. Okay. In any case, let's try that again. And okay, so it looks like that worked. So let's do a sudo and a tail of /var log messages. And we can see that it is defined there. Okay, that gives us a good heads up should something happen. So let's go ahead and let's check our host file. Oh, that looks great. Okay, we have our regular host file, and we can confirm that by doing a cat of /etc hosts. And we have our IP file, which has been appended to it after it created the don't update this beyond this line entry. So if we cat IP text file, okay, that looks great. All right, so fantastic. I'm liking this so far. And why don't we do a okay, why don't we update the or create the timer file. Oh, actually, before we create the timer file, let's find out what happens if we move the IP file to IP foo, or better yet, da. Okay, so if we move that to da and we run this, we should see an error. In fact, we do. We see 2 errors there. And are they logged in the... Or we see 1 error message and 1 status message. Okay, and a status message says that it's checking. And immediately followed by it, we have an error file. Can't access this. So I think that's the cat's pajamas. Okay, so we will move this back from da to ipfile.txt. Give it one more run, and that looks perfect. Okay, so let's go ahead and create that timer file that I was talking to you about. Okay, in this file is we're going to do vi update host file dot timer. Okay, and a timer file is this is our system D file that's going to tell us when something is ready to be executed. In other words, it's just going to sit there and be a timer and say, okay, it's time to wake up our service file, so boop, go out and do it. Okay, so to do that, we're going to define a system timer unit. If you're not familiar with that, I have information down the bottom of this video for comments. Okay, and let's see. Okay, we'll begin this with unit, and then we will add a description. Functions as the timer for update host dot shell. Okay. For update host file dot service. Okay. Now, the timer has a timer block that must be there. In each one of these blocks, which I'm defining from the unit to the timer to the install, are all part of the default structure for a timer unit in System D. So on boot, SEC, and 5 minutes. The 5M is 5 minutes. Okay. The on unit active SEC equals 5 minutes. Okay, and we have an install, and that is wanted by timer.target. Okay. Timers.target. Yeah. Okay, so our on boot says 5 minutes after it's booted, the machine is booted, we're going to begin this sequence. Okay. It's going to mark 5 minutes from that time, and the on unit active SEC says that 5 minutes after it has executed for the boot, it will execute continuously until we tell it to stop. And that's what all goes into that file. You can see it's only a few lines of code there, but it's very, very powerful. Okay, now one of the things about the systemd, as I mentioned, is that they will both have the same name, and through the name of the file, not the suffix, but the name of the file, that is how it builds a relationship between the two. So the timer, the update host file dot timer will look for the update host file dot service. We don't need to actually put the command in there, the units command in there, to identify the service file because it has the same name. Okay, so now we're going to have a unit file, and remember, we're going to put a description here. Description. And that description is going to be host file updates. Now, calls update host file.shell. No. Yeah, well, it does. In any case, okay. How about this? Update host file by calling script. Okay, close enough. All right, we're going to requires the network outline, the network online target. So whatever it takes to bring up the network, we're going to require that this target be completed, okay, and once, or be activated, and once that is activated and returns, we expect to then require that this completes completely the VBox add service dot service. We need this service to complete all the way, and if we don't, we're going to wait until this service completes, because we are dependent upon the VirtualBox guest services to be fully set up so that we can access our shares. And there's other functionality inside of the guest editions, such as GUI, the ability to run GUIs and things of that nature that will definitely, one, depend on. But for this service right here, we're just dependent upon the guest services to ensure that our shares are set up before we try to access, before we try to access the share. So, and what we're going to say is this service has a type of simple, and our exec start is going to call our root update host file.shell, because that is where we're going to deploy this file in order to be located. All right, and we will want to install this, and when we install this service, the service is going to be wanted by the multi-user. In other words, we want to be in multi-user mode before we execute this target. Okay, and so if we bring this machine down to single user mode, we don't want this target to run. It's only we only want it to run in a multi-user environment, which makes sense. Okay, so let me cat these two. Whoops. There we go. Okay, let's take a look at this. Okay, we have a unit file which describes this file as a unit. Okay, so we're looking at the service. Okay, and description requires is correct. The after looks correct. Okay, it's a simple, and we're going to exec that, and we're going to add it to that. Okay, so that's perfect. And the timer unit looks good too. We got the unit block in there. We got the description. We have a timer. We're going to do it on boot, and we're going to actively run that timer again every 5 minutes after boot. And we have we're putting this inside of the timer's target, which is what we need to do. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to, since we verified that we're generating our hosts correctly, I see no reason to go ahead and activate this. So let me see, do we have any? Okay, so I'm come back into the file. And now I'm just going to remove my debugging statements, and we're going to do a sudo cp update to /root where we're deploying this file. Now let's verify that sudo ls-l/root/update host file.shell. Okay, it's there. We got the executable bit. It's only readable by people in our group, and more importantly, nobody else can read it who is outside of that group. So I think we're all set there. Now, how we set up our service files. Okay, we're going to copy these files. Okay, so we're going to say cp up star, and we're going to copy them over to etc. systemd system. And when they're there, what we can do is we can do a system ctl, and this is the command that we're going to use to enable our systemd files. We're going to use it to start the files or stop the services, okay, or restart the services. And those were the commands which I was telling you that, you know, I kind of built into the structure into our update host file.shell, just in case we wanted to do expanded services to that. So this is the reason why. Now, one of the things which we're going to do is when we install a service, and we have to install this service in order for it to get activated on reboot, what we want to do is we want to run the enable command. Okay, so it'll be systemctl enable, and I'm going to give it the -long, and what this is going to do is this is going to look inside of each one of these files and it's going to look specifically for our install directives here, okay? And it's going to put on, for the service, it's going to put a link down into multi-user, I think it's target.wanted, okay? And for our timers, it's going to go into timers.target.wanted. And so let's go ahead and put those in. Update service. Oh. Yeah. Yeah. Update host file dot timer and update host file dot service. And okay, I spotted you. Okay, I think that's correct. Oh, blah. Okay, and it looks like when we ran that command, we created one for the service, but I didn't see the timer in there. So why didn't we see the timer? Okay, let's go ahead and check the timer. So let's do a sudo systemctl, and we will say list timers. And what we see is we see the clean timer, but we don't see our host timer, and I wonder why. Whoop. So let's see if I copied it over there, etc. systemd/system. Okay, we have both there, and they are properly named. Okay, so let's get a status on it. So system ctl status -long, and let's do the update. Okay, it sees it. Okay, so it says it's loaded, but I didn't see the link there. So let's take a look down in ls/lib/systemd system, and I think the timers target.wants is there. Ah, and okay, we don't see our link there for our timer for some reason. Let's look down multi-user target.wants. And down multi-user target.wants, do I see... no, I don't see our... But yet it put this... Oh, it's an etc. systemd multi-user. Okay. My bad. Okay, we got the timer there. What about the multi-user? Oh, we got the multi-user there too. Okay, so we should be good. So let's do a system ctl, and we will start our timers, our services rather. Update timer, and it says that we are not root. Failed to start access denied, blah, blah, blah. Okay, there we go. And let's check the status. System, CTL, status -L, update timer. And it is active, which is great. What about our service? Okay, that looks good too, but we're going to give it a start too. Okay, because I don't believe we started that explicitly. This is why I like to work at root, but I hear you. Okay, in any case, let's go ahead and cat our host file. Ta-da! Okay, why do we have two of them there? Oh. That is my bad. Okay, so I'm just going to fix this and we can confirm. But what it appears to be is, you know, we got to test these things sometimes. Actually, that should fix itself. That should fix itself. Let's just do this. System CTL, and well, better yet, let's do a journal. Let's do a tail/var log messages. Thank you. Okay, so the last time this ran was, looks like 4 minutes ago. So let's see when the next timer is going to run. System CTL. And let's say list timers. And what we have, we got 2 minutes and 50 seconds left before our update host fires again. Okay, so why don't see, we can't system CTL restart, and we're going to give it the update service. God, dog it. Ah, that just drives me nuts. I guess you can tell who worked at root a lot. Jeez. Okay, now we got a problem. Now we got a problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a system. Let's go take a look at this file, cd root. Okay, and let's go to vi update file. Okay, so why do we have multiple ones being, why isn't that log file being reset? Okay. So we remove that. So why are we including that twice. So we come through, and until we find the update separator, okay, that is not what we're looking for here, now is it? Oh, Lord. Lordy, lordy, lordy. There are those days, Bill. You just happen to pick all of them. Okay. Alright, so that was a great catch. No harm, no foul. Basically what happened was I had placed the wrong variable name there. I put the system update file, so it was appending itself on there. That was why it looked so bizarre. And let's come back here. And let's see if we can do a system, CTL, and let's do a restart, because this should clean itself up. Okay, and we want the service. Now it's cat, etc. hosts. There we go. Perfect. So, we have just installed our services. We got them to run. We can see that when we execute these properly, and we do it with sudo. Okay? Had to cheat and jump into root just to solve the problem, mainly because of my mechanics. So what we have here is we have our cycle actually working. Okay? Let's add a file or add an entry to our /media/sf admin, and let's work on the IP file. And I'm just gonna copy that twice. I'm put 30, and I'm going to say CW. This is a new entry for us. Okay, jump out, and let's check to see when this is going to run. So system CTL list timers. Okay, now one thing which I forgot to do was to do a daemon reload. And let me talk to you about what this command is about. This command is every time you change a service, systemd is constantly running. So it has to know how to refresh itself. And you have to tell it to go refresh itself. And that was one of the things which I just did right now. So if we go check on the status of things, let's see, system CTL list timers. Okay, yeah, we can say we got 2 minutes left to go, which is probably just enough time for me to type out another command. So I'm going to do a status, get a long status on system. You thought I was joking about that, huh? Okay, let me see. Okay, so here we go. Looks like the last time it ran was 2280. Okay, date. Okay, so what we're looking for here is simply, we have another about 2 minutes left. So during that 2 minutes time, let's go and we can modify. Yes, I do believe in being dangerous. We're going to modify this, and we're going to add some comments. Yeah, we're going to add some comments. It'll pass the time away, okay? Trust me. So, besides, I got to have another chance to screw something up. Okay, this is update host file.shell. And the purpose of this, this script is called from systemd to update to check the IP file.txt for new VM entries. Okay. Yeah. New VM IP entries. If found, it then adds the file. It then appends the list of IPs to the host IP, to the etc. host file. Okay, that should do good. Now let's go see what our timer says. Okay, our timer says that it fired while we were working on it. So why don't we just cat our etc. hosts. There we go. Bingo. Snoozle. Oh yeah. Okay, so it took a little bit longer. We probably went over, but it's a more complex system. I hope you can forgive me for taking so long. However, in the next lecture, what we're going to do is we got to deploy these files. So why don't we do the following, okay? Let's go ahead and let's copy these files, okay, the update share to /media/ SF admin. Okay, and we're going to go to /etc. systemd /system, because we want each one of these virtual machines to have these updates or to have this this functionality. So what we're going to do is we're going to set up within our Vagrant file a deploy mechanism for our files here. Thank you. Okay, and so let's do an ls-l. Make sure that we have them all. They are complete, which they are. Okay, so we have our IP file, which is being written from our Vagrant file as the machine boots. And if it's not inside of this file, it's going to add it to this file. Once it comes up, once the machine comes up, it's going to activate our services for both the timer and the service itself that calls into our update host file shell script that reads that wonderful IP file that then updates our etc. hosts. Okay, but none of that will happen until we do a deploy. So in our next episode, we're going to finish off our IP sync by writing a deploy system that will occur to every VM, when it's being brought up initially. So I will see you in the next lecture. And thank you for subscribing to my channel. That's when you press that little subscribe button, Right, yeah. In fact, sometimes I make a couple of mistakes there. So you can make multiple mistakes by hitting it in practice, okay? So practice hitting that subscribe button, Yeah, we like that, okay? Hey, thank you very much. Hope you're having fun, as much as fun as I am. Go bang some keys, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you. Bye-bye.